restrictions of COVID-19. We have good relationships with our communities and will maintain our policing stance, encouraging adherence to the new measures. If we suspect anyone to be in breach of the restrictions, we will speak to them, it says, explain what the restrictions require them to do and ask them to comply in order to help prevent the spread of the virus and ultimately save lives. What it doesn't speak about there are the sanctions mentioned by the Prime Minister, the dispersal powers given to the police and the prospect of fines for those who are not willing to comply with a police order to disperse. And just practically in enforcing the orders, I think that will be quite difficult as well, because certainly if you have large gatherings like we had at the weekend, which absolutely shocked, of course, not just the government, but many people around the country, that is relatively easy. You see large crowds of people, you move into those areas and you tell people to disperse, and for the most part, people will absolutely be willing to go and do that. But the other issue about trying to ensure that people stay at home and only leave home when they absolutely have to, very infrequently, to do a shop now and again for vital food and other products, to go to the chemist, maybe to go to an elderly loved one's house to help them if they're in need. How do you enforce that? Because if you're a police officer passing someone on the street, you don't know if that's their first time out of the house that evening or the 20th time out of the house that evening. So that in itself will be quite difficult to enforce. And let's not forget, the underlying issue here, the elephant in the room as far as the police are concerned, is that they have gone through years of budget cuts, which mean they are under strength. They are already dealing with a very significant reduction in violent crime, not just in London, but across the country. And that's not diminished. We've still seen regular news releases from various police forces talking about people who are still being stabbed and seriously assaulted on the streets of our cities. So there is still a job that the police have to do day in and day out without having to take on this extra responsibility, which could, of course, be very significant.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed. Our Home Affairs correspondent there, Mark White. And the question Mark raised there at the end about police resources is one I'm going to address very shortly with Ken Marsh, the chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation. But first, I want to bring back in our deputy political editor, Sam Coates. Of course, we were talking about the clarification that's going to be issued after the Prime Minister's statement. You've got it there, Sam. What's it telling us?
So the government have just published on gov.uk, their website, it's about a page and a half worth of guidance. If I'm being completely blunt, it doesn't go into a huge amount more detail than the Prime Minister. He covered most of the main points, but it does hint at this question you've been asking all evening about enforcement. It says right at the end that the government will be asked, every citizen is instructed to comply with the new measures outlined by Boris Johnson this evening. The government will therefore be ensuring the police and other relevant authorities have the powers to enforce them, including through fines and dispersing gatherings where people do not comply. So the emphasis on enforcement very much on the gatherings point. It also touches on this question of workplaces. It doesn't really, other than those prescribed by the Prime Minister, shops and other public places that have to close but in order to stop people congregating, workplaces essentially can continue even though he asks everybody who can to work from home. That's still pretty broad, the government pretty broad licence for workplaces to continue if they deem themselves necessary to continue operating. That's the thing that Labour have zeroed in on, and that I suspect will be a point of contention in the days to come.
Sam, thank you very much indeed, our deputy political editor, Sam Coates there. Well, I want to raise some of those issues now with Ken Marsh, chairman of the Metropolitan Police Federation, joins me now. We just heard there, Ken Marsh, that the police will have the powers to go about enforcing these new measures, but will you have the personnel?
Well, good evening. It's going to be very difficult what is being put in front of us. I don't doubt for 1 minute that my colleagues will rise to the challenge, because that's what we always do and it's what the public expect us to do. But when we talk about powers, we've got to see what they are, because we haven't actually seen these new powers. We're only at the moment talking about existing powers that we have, public order, etc. And one thing I would say straight off the bat to the public is please, You've got to come with us on this one. You've got to help us with this. Otherwise, this is going to get really, really impossible.
And you have